Okay, we are going to start as a subcommittee, and then we'll interrupt and call the roll once we have a quorum. Mr. Levine, possession is 9/10 of the law. Oh, let's see. 1, 2, we got 5, so let's go ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, there she is.
What's that? No, it doesn't work that way. Sorry.
Chesbro.
Here.
Chesbro. Grove. Bigelow.
Present.
Garcia. Murotsuchi. Patterson.
Here.
Skinner. Stone.
Here.
Williams.
We have a quorum, and so we will proceed with item 2AB 288. Mr. Levine.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'm pleased to present AB 288. The bill directs the California Coastal Commission to make notice of a public meeting or hearing available in both English or Spanish. AB 288 also provides that the Commission may make the notice available in any other language. Our coast is one of the nation's most treasured natural resources. It is in the best interest of the state to increase the potential for Spanish-speaking Californians to become more aware and active in the implementation of the Coastal Act. Coastal Commission actions impact several communities and neighborhoods throughout the state of California. This bill would help generate active participation by all affected Californians, not just English speakers in those areas. As noted in the analysis, the state's diverse population has given rise to several statutory requirements for translating important government documents in commonly spoken languages. Most recently in 2012, SB 965 by Senator Wright similarly required translation of agenda notices posted by the State Water Resources Control Board and the California Regional Water Quality Control Boards as well. In closing, AB 288 recognizes that coastal access is something we treasure in California, and we want coastal access for all of us. This bill is an important measure that helps expand public outreach and coastal protection. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Okay, is there any witnesses in support of this bill present? Any witnesses in opposition? Bill's been moved. There's a second. Any discussion or questions from members? I'll take your opening as your close, unless you really have something vital you want to say. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a question?
Just for clarification, we just are isolated on these dollars and these dollars. I'm sorry, these dollars and these dollars alone, as you've outlined within the bill, and those will come
from their current budget, which has been increased since last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it won't be going to other parts of their budget. It'll just be for the printing and the as the estimate was put.
Yeah, this doesn't actually cause them for spending any extra money. The costs are de minimis. If it's $20,000, as has been for the State Water Resources Board, there's no extra money allocated for that purpose.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll take that as your close. Please call the roll.
Chesbro.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do pass to Appropriations Committee. Chesbro.
Aye.
Chesbro, aye. Grove. Bigelow.
Aye.
Bigelow, aye. Garcia. Aye. Garcia, aye. Murotsuchi. Patterson. Aye. Patterson, aye. Skinner. Stone. Aye. Stone, aye. Williams.
That's out. Thank you very
Gracias.
much. Mr. V. Manuel Perez. Item 1.
Hello, Mr. Chair.
Welcome.
And members. Thank you for allowing me to present this measure before you today. As it is amended, AB 177 addresses an issue that is significant not only for my area but the entire state of California. The development of the Salton Sea's vast geothermal resources. Specifically, the bill requires the California Energy Commission in its biannual Integrated Energy Policy Report to convene a stakeholder group to advise the CEC on developing and transmitting renewable energy projects located in the Salton Sea resource area. As you know, the Integrated Energy Policy Report, otherwise known as IPER, is the state's master planning document for energy procurement. It has never included or addressed Salton Sea resources and how they can play a role in meeting state energy needs. This is a significant policy for a number of reasons. To begin with, the retirement of the San Onofre Nuclear Generation Station represents a loss of 2,000 megawatts of electricity on our grid. with the potential to lose even more generation due to the phasing out of once-through cooling generation facilities along the coast. We are faced with a key question about how this lost energy generation will be replaced. In southeastern California, meanwhile, we are blessed with abundant renewable resources. One of the most underutilized, however, is the Salton Sea's geothermal field. It is considered one of the most prolific geothermal hotspots in the world. Yet, of the Sea's estimated 2,000 megawatts of potential clean geothermal power, only 326 megawatts is being harnessed. At the same time, we have a public health and environmental catastrophe in the making at the sea. Reduced water inflows to the sea resulting from state legislation known as the Quantification Settlement Agreement will shrink the sea's volume by up to 60%, exposing up to 100 square miles of dusty sea lakebed in the desert's strong winds. Not only does this exposed lakebed represent a critical habitat loss for birds and other wildlife, but it poses a serious health threat for local residents who already suffer from respiratory illnesses in higher numbers than anywhere else in California. Under existing law, the state has unconditional responsibility for mitigating environmental impact costs associated with the QSA beyond its first $133 million. Therefore, it is anticipated that the mitigation costs of the state will be formidable, an estimated multi-billion-dollar obligation. By way of example, a similar water transfer resulted in the draining of Owens Lake by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, creating the single largest known source of fugitive dust in the United States. To date, more than $1.2 billion has been spent to stem that dust pollution. Mitigating dust pollution at the Salton Sea is likely to be much more expensive, not to mention the fact that there is considerable legal evidence to suggest the state is also responsible for the sea's actual restoration. I trust that you are beginning to connect the dots to understand that by removing obstacles to the development of the sea's vast geothermal resources, the state gains access to a potential source of financing to help the state meet its obligations. Just this month, the Imperial Irrigation District commissioned a study reporting nearly $4 billion in potential revenue if we were to build out the renewable resource potential of the Salton Sea Renewable Resource Area. Therefore, I urge your support for AB 177. It's very much in the state's interest to do so, both from the perspective of statewide energy planning and meeting our greenhouse gas reduction goals, as well as giving the billion-dollar price tag the state is facing with regard to Salton Sea mitigation costs. I respectfully ask for an aye vote. And we've also have sat down with the opposition and have sat down as well with folks that are neutral, sat down with many members, sat down with folks from Calpine as well. Cassandra, I think, will be speaking very soon. And obviously, I'm looking forward to continuing working with them as well, because I also understand the geothermal potential, or that also already exists in the Northern California region, that I think we need to look into as well.
So may I ask a question before I open the testimony? Do I understand correctly, and I'm not, it's up, you can answer this any way you want, it's no pressure from me, but
Sure.
Do I understand you correctly that you are willing to accept as authors amendments the proposal from Calpine?
Sure.
Okay, and now, of course, that's an amendment that was not adequately analyzed or agendized, so it would be one that you'd have to take it to subsequent
I think
committee.
it'll be in appropriations
Committee.
by then.
And I believe copies are, we can discuss the details after testimony, but I believe everybody has a copy.
Sure.
Or do
Well,
we
Mr.
need to
Chair.
hand them out? You will have a copy soon. So,
And I do have a couple of folks here in
okay, I'm
support
going
of
to
the
open it in
measure.
just a moment.
Okay,
You just
no
read
worries.
those? Okay, witnesses in support.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members. Billy Doring, representing the County of Imperial. We're very glad to see that the bill is amended to include geothermal resources both in northern and in southern California along the sea. Being one of the highest unemployment counties, or if not the highest in the state, the Salton Sea is a very important issue for us in the development, and especially with geothermal as we head towards the RPS. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Mr. Chairman, members, Jack Gualco with the Gualco Group on behalf of the Imperial Irrigation District. The author has stated the case very, very well, and the analysis also points out, I think, the essential point in this whole debate, which is the state has an obligation because of the Quantification Settlement Agreement and the stability that has brought to Southern California water supplies to make sure that the investment opportunities at the Salton Sea help provide the necessary revenue stream to be able to mitigate and restore the sea. Without that, the QSA is in jeopardy. So Mr. Perez's activities over the years to make sure that the sea and the QSA are properly recognized will be an important part of the debate for our water supply future up and down the state going forward. So we are pleased to support the measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next witness. Any other witnesses in support? Or tweener or in transition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee members. Cassandra Goff with Calpine. Calpine is the state's largest independent power producer, and we're the largest supplier of the state's consumed renewable energy. The geysers located in the Cheris District in Lake and Sonoma County supply about 20% of the state's, again, consumed renewable power. It's currently at 725 megawatts in terms of our output. Geothermal is a very valuable resource. As Assemblymember Perez has pointed out, he has been a vocal and passionate advocate for geothermal resources, and we understand how developing the new resources is important to his district and will be beneficial to his local economy and his local environment. Just as the geysers are beneficial to the local economies and environment in Lake and Sonoma County, Lake being one of, also unfortunately, one of the poorest counties. Because of our operations there, we are the largest taxpayer to both counties. We employ over 300 full-time workers and have about 150 other contractors on the mountain throughout the year. In addition, we too have 2 new permitted facilities that have project labor agreements and are as shovel-ready can be. But unfortunately, those permits will be expiring starting next year, air permits and then land use permits. And for various reasons, we've been unsuccessful in getting those permitted. So we are more similar and more alike, and we appreciate the Assemblyman working with him and his staff. It's been like the end of session at the first few days, but it's been really, really productive. And just the fact that this bill is here today has given us the opportunity to tell our story and bring awareness to what is happening to existing geothermal and new geothermal. And so we've been able to work together on these amendments to include, so that they are expanded to geothermal statewide. But there's something important here, and that's that I don't want to leave you with the impression, and I know this Assemblyman would agree, that this isn't the end. Mm-hmm. This isn't providing the solution. And there's a graph I've shown to many of you that shows in 2012 statewide, 2012-13, about 11,000 gigawatt hours of geothermal was being supplied to the state. But as you know, the RPS increased to 33% in 2011. And so after the RPS, though, as the IOUs have done a great job in procuring and securing enough contracts to subscribe to the 33%, the net effect is that 11,000 gigawatt hours goes down to 6,000 gigawatt hours. This is statewide geothermal by 2020 and could be less by then. And my point, the reason I bring that up is I don't think that was the intention of anybody when they passed the RPS, is that somehow existing resources would be threatened, because we need this as part of our low-carbon future. We all know that. You know, it shouldn't even be a matter of discussion. The geysers, the existing geysers, are the equivalent of 430,000 cars on the road. So, in terms of saved carbon emissions, the new projects would be the equivalent of 60,000 cars removed from the road. So, it's important that we continue this dialogue as we move this bill forward. But that we continue this dialogue, and we look forward to working with your committee and others this year, and particularly with Assemblyman Perez's leadership on this important issue, to see what else we can do to sort of right the ship, so to speak. So thank you very much. I look forward to working with you. I appreciate you taking the amendments. Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you. Next witness.
Mr. Chair and members, Erin Niemela representing the Large Scale Solar Association. We originally opposed the bill based on the integration language in it, which we saw as potentially convoluting an existing regulatory process that was ongoing with regard to that issue. While we won't be able to go through our formal process of changing our position and getting the author's office a letter, you know, he's done a tremendous amount of work with the stakeholder groups, invited them in, spent a lot of time addressing their concerns, and we could not be more complimentary of him fixing our problems. So until we can get a formal letter out, I'm going to feel comfortable saying that we're going to verbally go to neutral, and we'll be reviewing the Calpine amendments when they become public, but I don't anticipate any change in our position. We really appreciate it. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Testifying as a tweener, Valerie Torella, Pacific Gas and Electric Company. Want to echo my colleague. The author's done a lot of work here, and we removed our opposition, but are still reviewing the bill in the previous committee, Utilities and Commerce. Appreciate the analysis, and we would agree that we don't support specific carve-outs based on geography or technology, but we are disappointed that the integration and cost adder language adopted in the Utilities and Commerce Committee is not showing up today in the adopted version of the bill. There is a value to our customers in procuring a diverse portfolio. And part of that value is taking into account the cost of integration of renewables. We think that the consideration of these costs could level the playing field in our request for offers, our RFOs. So as pointed out in the analysis and by the previous witness, we acknowledge there is an ongoing process at the PUC. We don't wish to prejudge that outcome, but we would ask, we would say that there is some value in having some certainty that the work be completed, and possibly some direction from the legislature could help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Chairman, members, thank you. Ben Lubon on behalf of the Algal Biomass Organization. It's great to see that algae is in the bill. One thing I'd like to highlight and place on the record is that Scientific America wrote an article on the energy water nexus in 2008 that we're in a drought. The Great Colorado Basin has been in a drought from 17 to 40 years. Those turbines at Hoover Dam may not turn if it gets down to 17%, so I think you need to put that on your radar. On the algae side, I'm concerned that some of my fellow advocates are saying that 33% is enough on the RPS. Low-hanging fruit of solar and wind are involved. However, bioenergy has not had its time because it's been a promise and it's starting to come to fruition. So I thank you, and please move this bill forward.
Thank you. Any other witnesses? Witnesses in opposition?
Thank you. Melissa Cortez Roth on behalf of the California Wind Energy Association. First, I do want to acknowledge the work that the author has done. The bill has come a long way. While we do still have an oppose, we are now at an oppose unless amended with a very specific concern about the bill that's in print today. And that's with the stakeholder group. Within that stakeholder group, there is a requirement that they analyze the effectiveness of the integration value. The stakeholder group is done through the Energy Commission. The integration value is something that is an ongoing proceeding at the PUC. So we are a little concerned with the idea of one agency second-guessing the work of another, especially as those proceedings are ongoing. If that piece were removed, we would be able to remove our opposition. We do look forward to working this final issue out with the author's office. Again, they have been, they've come a long way on the bill and have had a very open policy with us and working with us on the issues we've had with the bill. So with that, we do look forward to working with the author.
Thanks. Any other witnesses in opposition? If not, let me say that Assemblyman, most folks, if you asked them what your district and mine had in common, would they probably say not much, but there's probably a lot more than people think. First of all, we have some of the poorest counties in the state, and in the case of Imperial and Lake, they're right smack up against also the two of the largest geothermal fields in the world, and in the state of California, where we have one of the highest GPS goals, and presumably one that's going to be increased and raised in the future. So I I first of all had a very productive meeting with the author, and I'm very supportive of the interrelationship between geothermal and the other problems that exist on the ground in the Salton Sea and in Imperial and Riverside counties, and understand that, you know, partly that was the result of the state and its actions, and so I'm supportive of his efforts to try to address those. But I also, and I think these amendments to some degree address it, but we need to also, beyond this bill, have a conversation about how to bring the geothermal subject, not a geographic issue, but one for the state. It includes currently developed potential and future geothermal fields, to try to figure out how to give geothermal its rightful place in the RPS and also in the overall energy mix for the state, because it provides not only renewable, but renewable that is baseline and is producing at 3 in the morning when there's no wind and no sun. And I think that deserves consideration in terms of how we place it. Now, the word carve-out was used. That's probably, you know, too far in one direction we want to go, but we also want to make sure that it's not being edged out and left behind when it is such a vital resource. And I don't know, frankly, how you achieve that balance, but I think we need to try to get the interested legislators and interested producers of geothermal and potential producers of geothermal together to talk about common ground and then figure out what they in common need in order for us to maintain and develop geothermal as for its proper place in the array of renewables that we're developing and holding on to. We don't want to, certainly don't want to be diminishing it as appears to be happening at the geysers. So anyway, I appreciate your flexibility and willingness to look at this more broadly than just your district, even though I also understand your primary concern here is the environmental, social, and economic aspects of what's going on the ground at Salton Sea. So I certainly will support the bill with this amendment and we'll work with you on the broader topic of how we give geothermal its appropriate place in the array of renewables. So, other comments, questions? It's been moved. Ms. Garcia?
And I just wanted to second the motion and thank the member. We had some discussions, and I know whilst I've been on the other side, and it's frustrating to move, but he's done a lot of movement and a lot of working with the groups. And so while not everyone's, you know, in support yet, I'm confident he's going to get there. And so I just want to commend them for that work.
Thank you.
Mr. Patterson? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Sumlin. I do appreciate the movement that's taken place, and I have been a no on this. Will still be a no, but I am optimistically looking at it with respect to getting it completely and fully put together. And if it gets to the floor and it has the components in it that some of the opponents have mentioned, I think it will be well received. And so I'm going to be a no, but that doesn't mean forever. And I really appreciate the hard work.
Thank you.
And thank you for it.
Thank you.
Any other comments? The one other thing I forgot to mention was, and several people touched on jobs, and you know, we hard-fought effort in the RPS to try to maximize the benefit of the development of renewables in our state, with the jobs and the tax base and the economic benefit being concentrated here. And here we have this in-state existing resource that I think is one of the best opportunities for us to fulfill that part of the RPS responsibility. So that's another reason I'm strongly in support of geothermal and why we need to try to figure out how to make sure that the opportunity is not ignored or diminished. So would you like to close?
I'll take that as my close, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay, well, no other comments or questions. Please call the roll.
Due pass to Appropriations Committee. Chesbro.
Aye.
Chesbro, aye. Grove. Bigelow.
Not voting.
Bigelow not voting. Garcia? Aye. Garcia, aye. Muratsuchi? Patterson?
Not yet.
Patterson, no. Skinner? Stone? Aye. Stone, aye. Williams? Aye. Williams, aye.
So it has 4, it needs 1 more, and we've got a couple of members who are not in the room at the moment, but we'll certainly, you're welcome to go try to find them, and
Sure.
we'll try to stay around until they're available to vote.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Finally, we have Mr. Salas, and it's item 3, AB 1104. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Bill's been moved. Is there a second? Been seconded by Ms. Garcia.
Great. Assembly Bill 1104 deals with existing pipelines for dairies. I think this is a win-win for renewable energy, using a natural product to move the state forward. And with that, I request an aye vote, since it's been moved and seconded.
But he's accepted it.
It just hasn't come out, so
I'm sorry. Hold on.
And Mr. Chair, I know you do have, the committee does have amendments to add a sunset. I am willing to accept those and appreciate the committee's input.
Thank you. Okay, witnesses in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael Bocador on behalf of the Ag Energy Consumers Association. We've worked very hard over the past number of years. Appreciate the efforts of the chair with AB 2196 trying to make biomethane a reality in California for dairy biogas. We think this bill could be potentially helpful as we move to that reality. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Karen Lang on behalf of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. The board acted yesterday to officially support and sponsor the bill, and we urge your aye vote today. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Next witness.
Beth Olaso on behalf of the Bioenergy Association of California in support.
Okay, thank you. Any other supporters? Any opposition? Bill's been moved and seconded. Would you like to close?
Question.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We do have a question or a comment from Mr. Bigelow.
Comment and question. One, thank you very much for carrying this and for your great work on this item. The question I have is, could there be an exemption for new dairies that exist to allow them the opportunity to partake in this?
Yeah,
new pipelines?
As the legislation is, and Mr. Bocador could speak to this as well, but under the bill now, it's existing pipelines. But if there's a new dairy and they want to form a co-op where they want to work together and utilize methane digesters, then they're allowed to do that. In fact, I know there's several, even off the I-5, where they're doing that to make it all pencil out. You know, I don't know if you want to.
I would just chime in to say that we've had the discussion with staff, and we don't have all the answers to all the questions at this point, but we're going to try and gather those answers and to those questions, continue to work with Mr. Chesbro's staff, and if we can bring that without significant opposition back, then I think we'd like to entertain that conversation. It's unclear to us to the extent of existing pipelines in that four-county region. There was one company that had a large biomethane contract with PG&E in Kings County that went bankrupt, and so we never saw, this was really something they were very interested in, these existing pipelines. We do think the concept of new has some merit and would at least like to continue to explore it, so it's on our mind as well.
Well, I'd like to just get it on the table and get it out in the air so that we are discussing it, because I think it does seem appropriate to make it inclusionary here. So that's up to you guys to work on it. I'm still going to support you today.
Thank you.
Mr. Salas.
Thank you.
Because I do
so for
believe
new
in it.
dairies, yes, and new pipelines, those are discussions we're still having.
I get it. I just want to keep it out there.
Absolutely.
So, now would you like to close?
All right. Respectfully ask for an aye vote. Like I said, I believe this is a win-win for the environment, renewable energy, and our dairies.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Please call the roll.
Do pass with amendments to Appropriations Committee. Chesbro?
Aye.
Chesbro, aye. Grove? Bigelow?
Yes.
Bigelow, aye. Garcia? Garcia, aye. Muratsuchi? Muratsuchi, aye. Patterson? Patterson, aye. Skinner? Stone? Stone, no. Williams? Williams, aye.
That has 6, it's out. And that concludes the consideration of bills. We have one that's on call. We'd like to, let's see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Item 1, AB 177. It currently has 4 aye votes. Chairman voting aye. Please open the roll.
Muratsuchi? Muratsuchi, aye. Skinner?
Okay, that bill is out. And we have, the other members are free to go. We have one other that you might want to add on to, and that's Mr. Levine's bill, item 2, AB 288, and the vote is 5-0. The chairman voting aye.
Absent members Muratsuchi? Muratsuchi, aye. Skinner? Williams? Williams, aye.
And I think that covers everything. Are we expecting Ms. Skinner?
Let's just stick around
I can, yeah, sure. Okay, members are free to go. Well, didn't you just vote on the third one? I think you were here for the, yeah, I think we got all three. Yeah. So we will await the remaining members for a little while here to see if they're able to make it, so. Sure.
They said she wasn't coming back till 2:45 or 3, so I'm just going to double check.
Okay, just make sure that that's the case. And give her the opportunity.
She won't be back, so
Okay.
we can go ahead and adjourn.
Okay, Ms. Grove is ill and unable to attend, and Ms. Skinner has a conflict and apparently is not going to be able to come back to vote, so this concludes the hearing of the Natural Resources Committee.